All right. Well, welcome everyone to tonight's Teacher Talk. This is brought to you by Life Changer of the Year and National Life Group. We've been doing Teacher Talks for almost a year now, and we're excited to keep this going. Each session, we bring amazing educators from all around the country to come in and discuss relevant topics. And this is part of a series that we have collaborated with the National Coalition for Safe Schools on. So this is number one in a multi-part series that we will continue through this month and into April and beyond. So in collaboration with NCSS, we have Diane Smokorowski. She is our fabulous moderator tonight. Thank you, Diane. We also have another great lineup of panelists. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you, Diane, and you can kick off tonight's show. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mallory. Resetting for resilience. That is the focus today. And our illustrious panelists. First, we have Alex Kajitani. Tell me a little bit about yourself, Alex.
Thank you so much. What an honor to be here. Again, my name is Alex Kajitani. I live in San Diego, California. Most of my career, I've been a middle school math teacher at Mission Middle School in Escondido, California, and have been just lucky to hang out with and teach and spend time with fascinating students and colleagues for the past 20 years or so. And so really excited to be here, have done a lot of work around social emotional learning and how it relates specifically to mathematics and how we can really use that to help our students get on and stay on the path to success. So looking forward to talking about things I want to talk about, things all of you want to talk about, and some of the unexpected as well.
Fantastic. And Alex, you've also been doing virtual math lessons this last year for all across the country.
That's right. You know, it's so funny when we'll start by taking you way back. When the shutdown first happened last March, I knew that, teaching math and helping students with math was going to fall to the bottom or toward the bottom of the priority list for a lot of parents because they're, so nervous often about teaching math, or that's the one subject that they feel slightly underqualified to help their students with. And so I wanted to do something to help keep math engagement high, keep students learning. And, if you think back to when the pandemic first started and the shutdown first started, just wanted to give parents an hour off so that they could go take a shower and not have to worry about everything. And so I created Wacky Math Hour, which was a weekly program with some colleagues where we just did really fun math things and explore different math concepts. And so we started it on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. and thinking, maybe 100 people would sign up. What we didn't realize is almost 2,000 parents and teachers would sign up to get their kids onto Wacky Math Hour each week. And so not only did we have a lot of fun, I think it was also, really a good lesson in that it's not just the students, but it's the parents, it's the teachers who need really that social emotional support around embracing math, learning math and really using math in order to be successful academically. And so we had a great time, and at the same time, hopefully gave the parents a bit of support as well, and had fun with the students.
I love it. Also with us tonight are John and Jessica Hannigan. Hi, friends.
Hello, hello.
Why don't you tell a little bit more about what you all do?
Sure. Well,
I'll let you follow, Alex.
We also had a Mackey math hour, but that is what we called our attempt to support our sophomore in algebra through Edgenuity on the online. So no, that's awesome, Alex. So I'm John Hannigan, and we're out here in the Central Valley in California. So our weather is San Diego weather for about 2 weeks in March and April, and then that's about the extent we get of Alex's climate over there. But I started out in the classroom as a 5th grade teacher, and then became a curriculum support provider, supporting classroom teachers in their craft, and then got tapped on the shoulder to go into admin, and so worked at a middle school, and then spent the better part of a decade as a elementary school principal out here in the Central Valley. And now I'm at the county office supporting the Juvenile Justice Center, the alt ed schools, really working on that some social emotional support for the students countywide.
And I'm Jessica Hannigan. These guys are hard to follow. But I wanted to start with just extending my gratitude to you all. It's been a tough year, and now more than ever, our SEL skills and our resiliency has been tested. And I know how hard you all work, so I just wanted to start with that. I originally was a school psychologist, so I wanted to, come and help with any behavioral mental health challenges in schools. And I quickly realized that I really needed to get into classrooms with the teachers and really understand what they're going through, both general ed and special ed, and then eventually learn from the admin lens, how can we blend these initiatives to make it work for all of us, so we're working together. And eventually became a site administrator, district office administrator, overseeing about, at that time, 23 schools at all levels, implementing behavior SEL supports in schools. Now I'm a professor in ed leadership. My goal was to get to as many administrators as I could prior to them becoming administrators, so that they also learn the importance of SEL in schools just as much as any other academic initiative. And so that's a little about me. Thank you again for having me today.
Well, we are excited to have all of you at the round table today. And just very quickly, everybody calls me Smoke. So if you're like, hey, Smoke, I have something I want to add, you just go ahead and add that anytime. I am currently the coordinator of digital literacy for the Wichita Public Schools in Wichita, Kansas. So I'm the central part of America while we've got all this West Coast goodness here. But I'm just thrilled to be here with all of you. Let's start with you, John. SEL prior to the pandemic had one definition, and I think it's got a new kind of, I don't know if I would call it definition, but maybe new elements to it during the pandemic, especially now that we're all transitioning back to school. How would you separate these two, or can you help us kind of navigate that?
Yeah. So, and I'm not gonna lie, I was guilty. I was guilty of it too. Pre-pandemic, it kind of carried the stigma SEL of deep breathing activities, or mindfulness, which are great. I'm not knocking any of that stuff, but it just kind of felt like the warm fuzzies. It wasn't really the way that we kind of support throughout the day the academic and social behaviors of our students. And so I would, to your point, I feel bad even saying smoke. To your point, Smoke.
No.
Smoking.
I'm actually, I can't wait to call you Smoke. Like, if I had a cool nickname like that, oh my gosh, which I'm thinking about one. Alex is going to help me. Okay, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Working on it. It's good.
We need to focus here.
But pre-pandemic, even supporting the schools, and even as a principal, I would say 99% of the office referrals that would come into the, just to see me were those social behaviors, the defiance, disruptiveness, inappropriate language, all those things. But I think what this pandemic has really shown us are the academic skills that are included in this, what we call social emotional learning. There's like goal setting, because now all the problem behaviors that we're seeing are students aren't logging on, students aren't turning in their work. And so all of these are academic behaviors that students are demonstrating. But now, as we return back, which many schools are now, that we keep in mind that social emotional learning are those social behaviors and those academic behaviors. It's a mix of all of them. So it's not one more thing to do or one more thing to implement, or the next new shiny object. It's been around for over 30 years. It's just now seeing it in a different way, that in the way that it impacts our students.
Agreed. And Alex, I know that you spent a lot of time talking about the students' connection to content and how SEL is a part of that together. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Yeah, one of the, so obviously relationship skills are, a huge, if not the hugest component of social emotional learning. And so, really in any topic, but especially in the math classroom, but really in any classroom, there's three relationships that play out every minute of every day, right? There's the student's relationship with other students. As we know, very difficult to focus on the academic content when, you've just gotten in an argument with one of your classmates or something like that. There's the relationship between the student and the teacher. as we also know, very difficult for a student to learn or to feel safe or loved if they don't feel like they've got a good relationship with their teacher. And then, of course, there's the student's relationship with the content itself. And this is something that, sometimes has little to do with us, sometimes has a lot to do with us as teachers. I mean, believe me, I'm a middle school math teacher, right? I've had a lot of students come in at the beginning of the school year with a less than stellar relationship with the math. And that extends to adults as well. I can't tell you the number of times I've sat in a parent conference meeting and said, well, your child isn't doing that great in my class. Well, they get that from me. I'm not that good at math as well. And so, we hear that all the time. And it, like I said, it doesn't necessarily need to be math, but adults bring their relationship with certain subjects, with specific content into their lives every single day. And so we cannot ignore the inextricable linkage between specific academic content as well as those social and emotional skills. I mean, you may walk into my class and see that I'm teaching the quadratic formula, but what we're really looking at are students' ability to solve problems, to gather information and organize information, and then to really have that perseverance to get through it.
And, I think that's true, and definitely in math classes. We see it in many classes of, I just don't know if I can find that connection to that content area. I'm struggling with that space because it doesn't feel relevant. And I think, and maybe that's just a piece of it, right? But I think that you're absolutely right that we have to address the social emotional connection to the content as well as just behavioral sorts of elements. Jessica, tell me, you're working with leadership and things like that. What can leaders do to help in this transitioning back into school and helping the SEL of maybe students and teachers?
I would love to smoke. So,
She was waiting for that one.
I really was.
Well done.
Thank you. So, a couple things I think of right away. But the one thing is just the intentionality of using multiple data points to really think about what have we learned so far? Where did we struggle? What are some areas our students are going to need support in? What are some areas our teachers going to need support in? And that requires both quantitative and qualitative data. So not just the numbers, but really using that perception data. John and I use empathy interviews a lot to really gauge the needs of our stakeholders and to really come up with a plan. So to make that a priority, I think is the number one thing. And then if you already have an established leadership team or a behavior SEL team, it doesn't matter what you call it at this point. It's a really good time to get together and really look at that data and decide what are some goals, what are some areas you're all going to work on together, and then make sure that those are just as much as a priority as you're opening up and as you're continuing this school year than any other initiative. So just a couple things as I'm thinking about the leadership aspect.
If I could add on to that, I think the fighting the urge to jump out and fix everything, because we're hearing, learning loss. And so I'm hearing from so many schools that some schools are like, no, we're not seeing it. And I don't know what you're talking about with this learning loss. Then I got other schools that are like, they want to retain their whole fifth grade class, so it's just that, see it as a K-12 recovery. Don't see it as we need to get them back on track to where they were by the end of the year or by the end of next year. See it as each year the students are going to matriculate to the next grade level, and we're going to get that gap closed. Because there's a new term that's kind of come out of this whole pandemic. It's called teacher guilt, that teachers are working later, working weekends, and they are just absolutely killing themselves because they're comparing right now to our 2019 versions of ourselves. And we're like, we got to do more. We got to do more. We're not making that impact. We're not seeing those results, but you are. Just so as those administrators, because I was a principal during out here we had the 97, we call them the 97 standards once we transitioned to Common Core. And the fatal flaw that I saw so many schools make was, oh no, Common Core, this new thing. We need to support our teachers. We need to buy this program. We need to do this. We need to do that. And all the teachers were saying was, you're killing us. Just stop. Let us get good at one thing. So I would say for admin to support their teachers would to be, stay the course, narrow that focus, and let's get kids first to fall in love with school again, support the teachers, and not throw a ton of initiatives at our teachers that are out there just breaking their backs. And so teacher guilt is real. I see you, I acknowledge it, and so just know you guys are doing tremendous work, and next year will be better. It'll be a K-12 recovery, so don't think you have to fix everything by the end of this school year.
And I'll just
Please go ahead, Alex.
I was just going to throw in, I agree with that wholeheartedly. And, as we think about this concept of learning loss, or what I prefer to call, unfinished learning, but it's really like compared to what, right? Compared to the last time there was a pandemic and we were all teaching virtually, and so, really, and if you think about what was it that as educators we wanted for our students pre-pandemic, right? We wanted them to be more resilient, right? We wanted our students to be more compassionate. We wanted our students to, be able to, relate, the real world or what was happening in their lives to the academic content. I've never seen a better year where that's happened. Our students have learned so much about resilience, about perseverance. Our students have become, more socially activated with the social justice issues that have been rocking our country more than ever. And so we've had this opportunity to also develop this other part of our students' hearts and souls that now we can hopefully put into, getting through those standards and the academic content and things like that. And so, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form it's going to be easy, but we also do have this opportunity here to build upon the learning that has happened. Our students now know what it's like to go through a pandemic, to live through that. And I wouldn't say we're post-pandemic yet. Just like John said, I think we're in the recovery phase. But that is a perspective that all of us are going to have for the rest of our life.
Indeed. And, you, Jessica and John, talked about these empathy interviews. Can you kind of give us a walkthrough of what that looks like? I think it's something we all could try to do back in our own schools.
Yeah, dude. Okay, I'll start and then he'll catch whatever I miss. But we really like the idea of empathy interviews because you're going back to the user, and we're actually asking our students and our families and the teachers that are experiencing this, what's working and what's not. And we're learning how to listen to hear. And we're practicing listening to hear and then taking that information and doing something about it. So coming back, and that's our favorite part of empathy interviews, is coming back, circling back around and coming back to the user, to the students, to the families, to the teachers, to let them know how the information helped in this particular area. Another way that we use it, and then I'll let John add to it, is teach students how to conduct empathy interviews, which I think is the most important part. So we're modeling it, and we could do it with our students as admin, we could do it with our teachers and our families, but having our students learn what empathy is and empathic listening, having them practice it, giving them assignments and opportunities to go to the community and conduct empathy interviews and coming back, just tremendous. And I don't know if you want to add to what we learned from our high schoolers when we conducted some empathy interviews with screens being off. I'll let John take it from here.
Yeah, I mean, we figure you buy a new phone from Apple, you get feedback from Apple. Tell us how we can improve our product. You get a new car within a month. You get, how was the turn radius? Give us feedback. We want to improve our product, but rarely do we seek out input from the user in the system within schools, and that's the students. And so perception data is probably one of the most valuable sets of data. I mean, we're good at looking at test scores and subgroups and all that stuff, but to truly seek to understand the user's experience in our system is invaluable. And so that's where we do love using those empathy interviews. And so it's it's an open-ended conversation where you try to stay away from those binary questions that could be answered in a simple word. You want to encourage story. So tell me about an experience when something in this virtual environment where it went really well. Tell me an experience where it didn't go so well, and that kind of feedback. So it's called an empathy interview, not a sympathy interview. You're not just sitting there going, oh, that really must have sucked. We're actually moved to change and do something about it. And so when we get into the user's experience, see the world through their lens, their experience that we've created for them, that's when we can change it and truly make it a better experience for all the students. And so this isn't a survey, where it's the very likely to somewhat likely, because I know teachers, if we have to take another survey, we may be moved to violence. I know, I'm telling you. But an empathy interview is just, it's that open-ended conversation. Doesn't have to be scripted, but that we actually act on those conversations that we have. I would also encourage it, admin to teachers. Now that we're coming back in these cohorts, how is this experience? Because I've also seen teachers that have high trust with their principals, and they're feeling just completely bewildered as far as this is the third master schedule change we've had since Christmas break. And so it's if we sought out that input from the teachers in that through empathy interviews as well, we can create better experiences for everyone as well. And so what we learned was one of the earlier on in this in the whole pandemic thing through virtual learning, the one thing that we were hearing a lot of was students aren't sharing their screens. And so we then just assumed, well, it's probably because so-and-so is a high school student sharing a room with their grandmother. They don't want the rest of the students to see. Those are the things we just assumed, or it was connectivity. So we'd give them a hotspot. It was absolutely heartbreaking. These students, time after time, I didn't like the way that I looked. I didn't like looking at myself. It was like,
Which
what a blow to the gut that was for us. We weren't expecting that.
Which definitely, well, empathy, just to kind of connect it to the SEL competencies, empathy fits in with social awareness. And so remember, each of these competencies gets deconstructed. You don't just teach social awareness. There's components of social awareness that we're teaching, and empathy is one area. And what kind of emerged from our empathy interviews with teenagers was the self-awareness component, and really going down into that self-perception and how it could impact their learning, their engagement, their depression, their mental health.
And Stephanie asked a good question too. Did we have universal probing questions or prompts designed? And so you want it to feel authentic. And so that's where you don't want it to be, a situation where you're just like, so tell me about, and you're just breaking rapport by taking notes, but you do want to have something somewhat scripted or planned out to kind of frame and guide that conversation. So whatever you're seeking to change or that you'd want input from, certainly have a few of those questions. And I this is the part that killed me the most, was silence. To just let that silence happen and sit in that awkwardness of it, because we don't want to force words into their mouth or say, I bet you really miss your friends, don't you? And start probing that in that way. Sit in the silence and encourage them to respond to those open-ended questions.
And I don't mean to do a shameless plug. It's not for that, but to answer your question, in our book, SEL from a Distance, we actually have templates of these different strategies and tools for each of the SEL competencies and their deconstructed components. And one of them is the guideline for empathy interviews.
Fantastic. I'll be checking that out soon.
I was just gonna add one of the things I do is sometimes as leadership trainings, but also with my students as well. It's just a simple activity. It's called 3 questions, right? And so basically you sometimes can give students the first question, or you get the first question, but then, so let's say you're paired off, right? And so you ask a question, and then it is your job to just listen. Just like John and Jessica said, that's all you do is you listen, right? And then based on the person that you're talking to's answer, you ask a second, deeper level question. And then you just listen and you sit in that silence if you need to. And then based on their answer, you ask a third deeper level question. And so what people report when we do this activity is they say, gosh, I wanted to jump in, I wanted to give advice, but instead I found myself having to just stop and listen. And sometimes that's one of the most empathetic and compassionate things we can do, is just stop and listen, right? We all have friends who are really good talkers, not so good at listening, right? And as Simon Sinek would say, there's a difference between listening and waiting to respond. And so taking that time to just sit back and actually listen and then ask those deeper questions can, really build on that relationship, as well as help with the self-awareness, I think.
And Alex, I learned that listen and silent have the same letters.
Ah.
So I'll tell kids and students that, just to remind them that we have to be silent and we have to practice listening.
Very nice.
I thought that was from a bad experience you had, not giving equity of voice in a meeting one time.
Look, I'm always trying to get better at getting better. I'm not saying we're perfect at any of this, but I did learn that listen and silent have the same letters. I know some of you are writing it out right now. Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking if we were going to do empathy interviews with our colleagues, some of us are coming back into our buildings full time. Some have been in doing the room and Zoom hybrid kind of thing. What questions do you think would be a good starter in an empathy interview with a colleague?
Yeah, so many are going through my head. I mean, one empathy interview question I'm thinking about is, what's been going well for you? Like what in your either teaching or your classroom environment has seemed to work that you could transition into hybrid or in person maybe. And then you could go into, obviously, because you have to talk about the challenges too, what have been the challenges. So then you could get to a place where, I was thinking about this earlier with a group of colleagues of mine, you're not alone. You're not afraid to share that this has been tough. This is hard. Simultaneous teaching is tough. I have a lot more respect for people working at drive-throughs, doing their little, like taking their order while talking to you at the same time and being efficient at both. So that's one thing that I thought of, that I would want teachers to have an opportunity to share what's worked and what hasn't worked. So then we could work together on getting better.
I think even just that those words, the shades of meaning, where it goes to pity, sympathy, empathy, then compassion, where compassion is the action to that empathy. I would say, what would the results that we're seeking to find be? And then that should guide then that question, because if we're not going to have any action to it, then we're really kind of just living in sympathy and not really towards compassion. Compassion is the action behind it.
That's powerful. Alex, what question would you ask?
I think there are two directions that you can go in. One is, how are you feeling about, right? So that's, I think, kind of always a good opening. How are you feeling about teaching both virtual and in person? Or how are you feeling about, coming back to school right now? So just kind of getting to more of that emotional side of it. And then if you want to go the other direction, though, one of my favorite questions to always ask is, regarding, fill in the blank, what's keeping you up at night? And so that, that all of us have something that's keeping us up, or that we wake up for me, I call it the wheel of worry, right? I wake up at 2 a.m. and it's like, my brain just like, it's got the 10 different slots for different things I'm worried about, from, my kid to my job to everything else. And it's just kind of going, and wherever it's going to stop, that's what I'm going to worry about. And then it's going to start up again, and then it's going to stop somewhere else. But sometimes what we really need is just tell somebody and start to express what it is that's keeping us up at night. And that allows us to sometimes get to the issues behind the issues. And so I think those two can, how are you feeling about, and, regarding what's keeping you up at night. And those can be give us really good insights in, or feel free to ask yourself those questions, but those can give us some good deep insights into really what's going on, behind the issues.
And I love Melissa's in the chat. I hope it lands on 100. Oh, wait, is that even more? Wow, look at that.
And
$1
$1
million.
million is nothing these days, Jessica. So now we've got to go to $100 million because
100 million.
a million's no big deal anymore. But I agree, Melissa. I hope it lands there too.
Hey, Alex, I didn't mean to call you. Hey, Alex, I was thinking an SEL strategy for that in the stress management categories, the circle of control exercise. So really visualizing your circle of control, what you can't control, what you can. We start working on giving students these strategies at a young age. So they start learning how to identify stress and those things that keep them up at night too, and how they start to identify what they can control, what they can't, so they could start using their strategies to make it manageable.
I like that. I will try it tonight at 2 a.m.
yeah,
I'll send you a visual.
Thanks.
well, because then so we call the outer sphere the if only sphere. If only the parents would have them more prepared. If only those are things that we can't control, and so that if we just focus on that inner circle, and if those things are keeping us up at night, then we can say, okay, what am I going to do about it? So that helps kind of for that adult, that self-care SEL, that we just then turn inward on those things that we can control, because those things that are out of our control will also keep us up at night.
I like it.
Okay, so now we're looking at the fourth quarter of school, which, you know, it felt like we were in a in a state of molasses from March last year through many, many months. And now it feels like we are on that wheel that's moving much more quickly. And then we see, like we're at the fourth quarter. It won't be much longer before we start to wrap up the school year. What are some things that we need to do to think to how to be mindful for bringing that sense of community back into the classroom with our kids? What are some thoughts you have around that?
Well, I think one of the things that is really a good opportunity that we have is like we're now going to get to put like real actual names to faces, or to, we've been seeing each other on these 12 by 15 square inch monitors and things like that. And so just like, for many of us, maybe we've met people online, or we've got friends on Facebook and things like that, and then suddenly we have the opportunity to to meet them in person or something like that. Now we suddenly have this opportunity to take all of the things we've sort of been learning about our fellow classmates or our teachers or our students. And then, for those of us who are coming back to in-person teaching, really put kind of the actual physical faces and beings together. And so I think one thing is just, it's really an opportunity to take everything we've learned about someone and then, kind of get to know them on a deeper level. I also think that it's an opportunity to show them what school can now be, right? I think the future is hybrid. I don't think we're ever going back to where everything was in person. We've learned a lot as teachers about what we can do online, what we don't need to do online, what we don't need to do in person. And so when the pandemic first started, we sort of focused on how do we take the old reality and put it online, right? How do we take everything we were doing, but just do it over Zoom? But that has evolved into how do we create a new reality where we can best educate students? And so if we focus on that and give students a bit of a preview of what school can be moving forward, to me, that's very, very exciting. Assuming we have some new and innovative ideas, that is.
Oh, agreed. What you described a moment ago is, Alex, you and I have known each other a few years, and we've met in person a couple of times, but we connect on, seeing what people are doing in social media. But then that moment when we get to be in 3D, it's like, oh, it's Alex. And you go and you hug. And I know we can't quite do that quite yet in the classroom, but it's almost like my world just came into 3D. And you can't wait for that connection to happen. That's my hope that's going to happen in the classrooms, even though the students may not have had their cameras on. I experienced it this week. Walked into the building and I was like, I know that voice. You're that voice. I met you in 3D. Oh, Siri wants to talk as well. But you get all those things in there. It was a really special moment. And I talked to a principal today whose students have just transitioned back into face-to-face who had chosen to be remote and now they're back in-house. And they said that the kids are coming up and like, I remember you. It's great to have you back to school. It's really this kind of wonderful reunion that's happening. John, what are you seeing?
Well, just those of us that have been around a while, 10 years doesn't seem like that much time, but for these kids, like this next year's juniors have never seen a full year of traditional school. These juniors in high school, like next year's second graders have never seen a full normal year of school. So I know that like from our educator lens, we're like, once these kids come back, it's going to be like it used to be, and we can welcome them into our classrooms and pick up where we left off. But for the kids, it's not the case. I'm supporting a high school here in the Central Valley, and kids came back after Christmas, right after Christmas break. They were back in, and it was like, sweet, we're gonna pick right up where we left off. And the teacher would ask a question, and the kids would just sit at their desk and go like this, like they were, still staring at a computer screen, and they were calling it COVID brain. They were like, our kids have COVID brain. It's like the lights are on, but nobody's home. And so it's like having to kind of recalibrate what that face-to-face looks like. And to your point too, Alex, it's, we do need to kind of reinvent then what this does kind of look like as well. Cause we've also seen that, some students to learn content traditionally don't need that full 6 hours in person, face-to-face. And yeah, what would that look like? But I think there is a lot of recalibrating as well, because while we're transitioning back, going through a lot of those safety protocols and things like that too, some of the things even at the elementary that I'm hearing is that it takes 30 minutes just to transition. So when we've got them back for 2-hour little cohorts, and it takes 30 minutes to wash our hands to come into class and then 30 minutes to wash our hands out. Well, there's an hour of our 2 hours that we have together, with a bunch of 5-year-olds. And so just seeing what, as we're recalibrating this face-to-face, thinking through all that stuff too.
Mhm.
Are you saying?
Well, if I could add, I love the reinventing idea and really humanizing the experience, whether it's online or in person. But please not forgetting how important these social emotional learning skills are to this recalibration and the work that we do as students are coming back, for the adults and for the students. As you were talking, I was thinking about my mom, who's a teacher, and her first grader came. They finally had, like, they're picking up their materials before they're going to start class. And she started crying, like just seeing my mom, her teacher, in real life, just tears of joy that there you are, you're my teacher, you're right there, and you're real. So it was so powerful. I also want to say that intentionality of relationship skills needs to be a priority. This isn't just, we don't do relationship skills just at the beginning of the year anymore. Relationship skills has to do with building communication, social engagement, relationship opportunities, student to student, student to teacher, and that needs to be integrated all the time. And I think this is a great opportunity to focus on how you establish that within your classroom.
And I think it's in our favor to encourage students who might be struggling with language, not knowing, I'm when do I mute, when do I unmute? But we're in face to face. We've seen this too, of like, oh, is it okay for me to talk? Encouraging students to use visuals to express themselves instead of just writing an essay or turn to your neighbor and talk, which is still quite powerful. Take a moment and doodle what your thoughts are, and then use that as the conversation starter with that neighbor to the side. I think that also would help us learn to feel more at ease in sharing our thoughts. Just a thought around that. All right, we have a question from the chat. What are your thoughts about kids who are more comfortable with their avatar self than their real selves?
Yeah, I saw that, and I also see Michael. Big shout out to Michael. How you doing, my friend? He says, I'm worried about the students who had so much success with agency and have anxiety about returning to the physical classroom. And so, I think that there's a few different things on this, but what was interesting was a lot obviously the pandemic and this move to virtual learning has really shined a spotlight on some of the phenomenal inequities, that happen, in our society, and especially, in schooling. At the same time, we also found that there are a lot of students who really excelled with virtual learning. There are a lot of students who, did really well, and who, really have come to prefer it. And so if we think about, pre-pandemic, what did classroom participation look like? Yeah, there were some variations, but for the most part, classroom participation looked like you raise your hand, you call, you speak when call on. Some students, 20% of the students do it 80% of the time, that kind of thing. But that's class participation really, only looked like one or two different things. Suddenly, with virtual teaching, with hybrid teaching, class participation looked like, a thumbs up sign. It looked like putting something into the chat box. It looked like commenting on somebody's Flipgrid videos. It looked like putting up the polls, right? So let's not go back to where class participation only looks like one thing. Let's work those in, right? Let's work those in so you can be physically in class, but you know what? Up pops the poll, and then you get to answer the poll. Let's do where maybe even though you're sitting next to the person, you can still, put something into the chat box in order to respond. Let's continue to build on all of these different ways of responding and allowing kids to be successful and participate in class, as opposed to just saying, well, if you want to say something, raise your hand and I'll call on you.
And then
100% agree on that. 100%. John, what were you going to say?
no, just to Melissa's question too, the students that are more comfortable with their avatar self rather than their real selves, kind of like what we were just talking about on what should we, as we were preparing to recalibrate our face-to-face, that knowing that with that kind of that ladder of motivation, that Maslow's hierarchy thing, once that physiological and safety needs are met, that next one is belonging. So what, as a faculty, as a campus, as a community, are we going to do to create a sense of belonging where every student is seen and heard? Because then the next one up from there is that esteem, that self-love. So to Melissa's point, as far as if I'm a student that's more comfortable with my avatar self, that's the way that we see ourselves, that I need to have that built. And so we are kind of the de facto parents when these students are in our care. What are we doing to build that? And it could be campus wide. It doesn't need to just be solely on the classroom teacher. There's just those, we can have, mantras written in the hallway where you are seen, you are heard, you are loved, you belong. Or Brene Brown's got her be here, be you, belong, or you are beautiful. Like just those things, or you just feel it. You step on your campus and you just feel it. And you know that you're seen, you're appreciated, you're valued. That's what builds, especially at the secondary level. My goodness, where students are so desperate to belong. And that's what I think is hurting through this pandemic. God, I saw like Clark County in Nevada has, I think, 18 suicides just since this pandemic. That's more than a kid a month, where that sense of belonging, if students don't have that, then the consequences can be devastating. And so I would say, as we return with students, create that sense of belonging. I know that state testing is coming up, but to just belonging and building that self-esteem, that self-love with our students would be an investment in the future.
And I would want to know, I don't mean to go back to empathy interviews, but I would want to have conversations with those students who are feeling more comfortable with their avatar self than their physical self, or however you want to word that. I would want to know the why, like what is it that's making you feel safe in this way, but not in this way? Because we want to get to a place where you feel safe in both. So that's what I think my psychologist side went back to that, is really looking at how many kids in my class are feeling that way. Is it a handful? Is it a lot of kids? If it's the handful, what are we doing to reach out and try to figure out, how can we help you? The other thing I was thinking about is why we were so passionate and felt a call to action around SEL was, you know, sometimes we didn't learn that, you know, in teacher school, how to integrate SEL competencies within our everyday classroom. We learned a lot of classroom management and maybe some SEL strategies here and there, but we felt really truly a call to action to help teachers understand, look, you're doing a lot of this. Here are some core competencies. Here's how you could at least start with being aware what's important around SEL and how you could start integrating so that you could recognize a kid like that that was just mentioned in the chat may be struggling with some self-awareness and may need some skills around that area. And here are some strategies you could begin with. And then if that child needs more, you could go to that next level or layer of support at this school. So I just had a lot of, I want to help that child right now, but I had a lot of layers of thought around those kinds of scenarios by name, by need.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'll just throw in also, you know, as you talk about belonging, John, and I think one of the most simple yet effective things that we can do to really foster a sense of belonging with our students is get their names right. Like especially our second language learners who, you know, might have names that are, you know, traditionally hard to pronounce, you know, things like that. But nothing is more empowering for a student to walk onto campus and have an adult say their name in a welcoming way and say it correctly. And nothing is more degrading for a student than a teacher who just can't take the time to get their name right. I mean, believe me, my last name is Kajitani, right? I've heard all sorts of attempts at saying my name. I never, if a teacher was making the effort to say it correctly, all good if they didn't say it correctly, right? Or if they didn't pronounce it. But the teachers who really made the effort to, you know, hey, how do I pronounce your name? You know, and then would use my name or any of our students, that it's really empowering. And again, when they don't, or when they just sort of blow it off and don't see that as important, I mean, it's really, really degrading. One of the, you know, one of the best ways, one of the first ways that we differentiate learning is just say everybody's names, right? And that's the one, the sort of the first thing that sets us apart from everybody else. And so just if you're looking for one simple way to really foster a sense of belonging within our students, it's just make that effort to get those names pronounced correctly.
Agreed. And Stephanie just brought this up as well, is that she's working on asking for pronouns. So that is another layer of it, so that we can recognize, we see you, student, we recognize who you are and the special things that are about you, but help us know you a little bit better as well. I think it's pretty powerful pieces in there. You know, Michael added another piece above about students having a lot of agency, being remote, or we've seen a lot of things like choice boards with teachers and allow the students to navigate on their own and have the ability of choice in the classroom. And that may be one of those things that comes back to what we saw before school, you know, sort of a thing. What advice do you have for teachers on that to encourage more agency, even back in school?
Well, just one thing, that's the definition of SEL, is to teach our students to identify the relationship between their emotions and behaviors and vice versa, and use their tools in their toolkit to advocate for themselves, to access their school and their life. And so I wanted to start with that, and then I'll let you all answer, but that's what we're striving for in our own kids, or the kids we serve, is we want them to be able to self-monitor their emotions and their ability to access their life with these strategies. And self-agency is one of the most important ones.
No, I thought you did a very good job.
Oh, thanks, John. Thank you. Thank you.
I'll just add in also, you know, I think just really helping students recognize how they are, how they prefer to learn, how they want to learn, and how they most effectively learn. And so I will tell you that at the beginning of the pandemic, my 15-year-old daughter decided that she wanted to learn to play the guitar. And so I got her a guitar and got her set up with, asked for recommendations for a guitar teacher. And she did a couple of lessons, with this teacher over Zoom on the guitar. She didn't like the teacher. And I said, oh, okay, well, I guess you don't want to learn to play the guitar anymore. That's too bad. She said, oh no, Dad, I absolutely want to learn to play the guitar still. I just don't want to learn with that teacher. I don't want to learn in that style. What I want to do is I just want to go onto YouTube and I want to teach myself. I said, oh, okay, let's see if that works, right? Let's just say 6 months later, she's now a fantastic guitar player. She's never taken another lesson since. She follows these YouTube tutorials and things like that. She was very in touch, much more in touch than I was, with a master's degree in curriculum and instruction on how she should learn, right? And so allowing our students to recognize and maybe giving them different options on how they can learn something is something that I think we can really take from, what we've learned over the past year, is that there's a lot of different ways to learn things, and giving our students that agency to learn that and to and to learn how they learn best and most effectively, I think is a huge lifelong skill that we can all take from this.
So your summary is we need to know our students as people and as learners.
There
Exactly.
you go.
So the first initials and Rito in the comments, the connecting the empathy interviews to a great tool to foster that belonging as well. It's I love how it's all really connected with this whole process. I mean, when we think back to those teachers that made that difference in our lives, all of us, we can say they treated us like the young adults we were becoming. I mean, I don't think of like oh man, no, I take that back. If I had Alex, I'd be like, you know what? That quadratic formula lesson changed my life. But
there's still time, John. There's still time.
But it's those connections where we felt seen, heard, valued for the young adults that we were becoming. I mean, all of our memories, it was the way that we felt safe, we felt loved, we felt seen and heard. And so that's where that's I just made that connection to what that participant wrote. So thank you for that comment. I like.
And I just want to throw out another strategy that's just as impactful as empathy interviews is how to have a cluster meeting. We have it set for 20 minutes or less. It could be more if you need, but having just very intentional cluster meetings. If you are seeing a pattern of areas of need in your classroom, like I think someone referenced, it's a lot of our kids who are feeling more comfortable behind the screen, then maybe that's something you could pose to like a classroom meeting where we are having our students be part of the, solving or figuring out what's going on here instead of us trying to figure it out. So that's been really powerful. Basically, it's 4 steps. What is the prompt or area that you're addressing, whether it's students give you the prompt as an area, or you start to see based on your classroom data that this is a need. I want to bring it back to my students. And then you do whole group, you do small group, and then you come back with collective commitments around that area. Really powerful.
I like that.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And you're hearing Christina 100% agrees that her meetings are very beneficial in her classroom as well. So we're getting close to the end of things, but I'm curious, when you think about this idea of returning back to school and the possibilities of knowing our students as people, as learners, and getting to know them, maybe in a new way now that we're in the 4th quarter, what are you most hopeful or excited about in connecting with your colleagues and your kids again?
I would say that, one of the things that is so wonderful about school is that it's this place, right? It is this place that we all come to in order to, do the business of learning or building relationships or engaging students, or, everybody may have a different definition of why we come to school. And so that can be virtual, right? It can be a hybrid of the two, but there is something about having this physical location that people come to in order to build a culture, build the learning, build the school together, and be part of something. And so I think that, one of the things that we've done virtually is some teachers have done it really well, which is they haven't just run a class, but they've built a community, right? A class is something that you go to, you learn something, you get some skills, maybe you take a test, you get a grade, you're out of there. A community is something that we come back to. It is something that we contribute to, that we, take care of others' needs, and that we all have a sense of we're all in this together. And so one of the things that I think is so exciting is just to be able to report to a physical location that is this community that we call school. And that has always been magical, and being gone for so long, I think it will be even more magical now.
I would just say, I mean, it's even in the title of our little Zoom webinar, is they're building that resilience, that just that by definition, teachers have proven themselves to be the most resilient professionals in any career path, through the way that they've adapted and taken on the teaching and learning process throughout this pandemic. And so I just want to say kudos to each and every one of you. I've just, as far as once we return back, that the thing I'm most happy about is just those human connections again. Just just adult to adults, and then adults with kids. I mean, I think probably getting that second COVID shot was, I think, probably the most emotional I've had since I was a toddler, receiving a vaccination. So well, I think we're all really excited to get back to our campuses.
And I could just add, celebrate the hard work and continue practicing that gratitude for all these experiences that we've had, and all the great success that has come through a really difficult time. I just, want to make sure that as everybody's going back, that we're grateful, and we're also celebrating our many wins and continuing to learn from these, lessons learned. And we don't forget about it, because the crisis is gone. Like, we learn from it and we get better, and we continue supporting each other as we get through, this next level, or the next kind of phase in this transition.
Well, and friends, here we are. It's April, nearly, and the good is yet to come. I hope that you celebrate the fact that you have made 3/4 of the year. And with every pivot, you deserve another high five for everyone that you went through. And that we're just cheering you on every step of the way. Thank you for being amazing leaders for kids. And thank you for being someone who just inspires others every single day. All right. Thank you, friends, for joining the roundtable. It was just a pleasure being with you all.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you for
What a pleasure.
having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.